MCAT office hours. It is Tuesday, December 9th, 12/9/25. You know what that means, Petros? I don't know what that means. It just means it's Tuesday.
Did I miss a day?
I'm like doing some Taylor Swift numerology in my head, going, what's 12 plus 9 is 21 plus 25 is 46. I don't know what that means. Although that is pretty close to how old I am. So that's kind of sad, but
me too.
It is what it is.
Other direction, probably. So.
Petros Benassi, VP of Test Prep and Tutoring at Medical School HQ, 45 plus years. You see how I got 40 stuck in my head. 25 plus years of experience in the MCAT and Test Prep world. You started young. You started right out of the womb.
Yeah, right.
That's how we roll.
That's it.
I have one of my first presentations that I did in person, like workshops or talks that I did at a conference, very small conference. I put a picture. I don't know where I found it. I don't think I have it anymore. A picture of me in an incubator, like as a neonate, because I was jaundiced, which a lot of kids are coming out of the womb. And so I put that up going, I knew then, based on the wonderful care that was given to me, that I was going to be a doctor.
I've always wanted to become a doctor from the minute I was born. Yeah.
There you go. My name is Dr. Ryan Gray, founder of Medical School Headquarters Mapped, author of the Pre-Med Playbook series, host of the Pre-Med Years podcast, all that good stuff. We're here to answer your questions. So if you have some questions, throw them our way. If a mean matriculated MCAT is 511, but it's 80th percentile, then how do the other 80% get accepted? That's not how those numbers work. 80th percentile is all about the number of students taking the MCAT. It has nothing to do with accepted students. So yeah, Chronicles, ask that question again, maybe differently. But to your question, MCAT's only one variable in the medical school application. That's how the other 80% get accepted, although not 80% in this case, because that's not what that 80th percentile means. Yeah, Petros, it's complicated, right? The MCAT is a big part of the admissions process. It's the great equalizer in terms of a number that admissions committees can look at, but it's not the only thing that they look at.
No. It is a factor. And to your point, it is the one common factor across all applicants in that everyone's been measured against the same standard, hence the term standardized exam, right? That's where the term comes from. Everybody's being measured against the same standard, being measured against, getting the same types of questions, et cetera, et cetera. But yeah, it's one factor, right? Not to over elaborate on the percentile, but we'll over elaborate on the percentiles. The percentiles represent what percentage of students you scored better than on the exam, right? That is on the exam. So if you're in the 50th percentile, that means you scored better than 50% of all test takers, and 50% scored better than you. If you're in the 80th percentile, that means you scored better than 80%, 20% scored better than you. When you look at admissions numbers, that's everything, right? That's all the things. And so, what's also kind of skewed ever so slightly, and I think this is where fun with stats comes into play, the number of people who take, legit, like the number of people who take the MCAT in a given year does not equal the number of people who apply to medical school in a given year, right? So you might have what I think, don't have top of my head, but like 85,000 or so unique test takers in a given year. 85,000 people don't apply to medical school. So there is a population that self-selects out of applying to med school, unfortunately, sometimes based on their MCAT scores, right? So sometimes it's the opposite. Sometimes it's, I scored well in the MCAT, I've decided I don't want to go to med school. All right, this is not for me, whatever it might be. But there is a population so that's where Chronicles, to your point, you're talking about like 46% get accepted and 80%, like whereas all that's why, because you're looking at 46% of the people who got accepted from the pool that have applied, and that pool that's applied is already self-selected out, right? So you're not starting at the 1 percentile as far as the MCAT score. I almost feel like there's an MCAT passage in this as far as explaining what MCAT scores, how it all works. A good stats passage or good passage about statistics. But yeah, that's where it gets complicated. But
it's complicated. Yeah.
Yeah.
Good stuff. All right, keep those questions coming. It's a bell curve. Unfortunately, government policies limit the number of residencies and medical school programs we have, therefore requiring a more competitive testing method to whittle down apps. Yes and no. This whole limit residency spots is just one of my biggest pet peeves. There is some truth to that. Petros, I don't know if you've ever heard me talk about this, but we can go back and look at historical data of how many residency spots there were in 1990, 2000, 2010, 2025. Residency spots are going up and up and up and up and up. There are more residency spots that are graduating physicians in this country. So there is a sliver of truth that residency spots are limited by funding is limited with Medicare and Medicaid, but that doesn't limit the number of residency spots. That just limits government funding of residency spots.
Mm-hmm.
So, all right. So let's see. Good question from Instagram. What's the best way to review? I did a spreadsheet, but because it's too long, I didn't end up reviewing it. It sounds like they had good intentions here, right? Setting up a
very good intentions, right?
Yeah.
Probably spent more time on making the spreadsheet than actually utilizing the spreadsheet. So I'll say this, the act of making the spreadsheet is also part of your review, right? The fact that you're actively going through, I'm assuming that spreadsheet, related to questions that you got wrong or questions that you got right or topics that you knew that you needed to review along the way. So like the act of doing that is beneficial. Obviously, the benefit of making a spreadsheet or making some kind of, checklist or prioritization list along the way and utilizing it, that's actually what will improve your score. I think the key really comes down to, and this is a mindset shift for some, is to not get overburdened by wanting to do everything. There is a kind of a pandemic of fear of missing out, of good old FOMO when it comes to the MCAT, right? I gotta cover all the things. I gotta do all the things. And it's really easy to fall into the rabbit holes of wanting to review every single question, every single topic, not considering what's higher yield, what's lower yield, what, maybe that day you just happen to not do well on that one question and you now think that you don't know thermodynamics all of a sudden. And that's, nothing further from the truth kind of thing. So, the best way really to kind of review things is active review. And what I mean by active review is do problems, right? Work the problems, get comfortable with the problems. I've said this 1,000 times here. I will say this till I stop talking about testing, period, which hopefully isn't for a very long time, that, it's not about what you know, it's about how well you're able to apply what you know. And that's where you get the point. So I have this conversation all the time with students, something to the effect of, I did all this on-key review and I know my content. Great, good for you, right? And that's literally my response, not in a condescending way, but in a, okay, you know the content. Can you use the content? Have you practiced using the content in the actual setting that it's going to be used? And, it's the, there's a really like just bad joke about a mathematician, an engineer, and a chemist, or insert 3 scientists into it. And bottom line is, the punchline is, one of them just sits there and says, I know the answer, but doesn't do anything with the information kind of thing. So it's not good enough just to know stuff. It's know how to apply it, right? Know how to put it into practice. So as far as what's the best way to review, practice problems, use the outcomes, the performance, your performance on the practice problems to dictate what you need to go back to and what you don't need to go back to. And then cross things off the list. Be like, all right, I'm consistently performing at 80, 90% on a given, topic area or content area. It's time for me to move on. We naturally feel better about ourselves when we do things that we're good at. So we want to keep doing them. That's not true for the MCAT. That's true for everything in life, right? So if you're good at something, you'll just want to keep doing more of that. That's why, athletes play whatever sport it is that professional athletes are professional athletes in whatever sport it is they are playing in, because they were good at baseball or they were good at basketball or they were good at tennis. So they kept doing more of that. And that's fine. But the way that they get better is by working on what they're not good at within that discipline. So that's what you're doing here, right? You're good at the sciences. You're good at taking care of people. You have a desire to do so. You have to keep working on that as you're going through. So that'd be my list to you.
There you go. Good luck. Keep crushing. Another one from Instagram. Is it okay to take the MCAT without all of the prereqs completed? And if so, which prereqs can I put on hold and still do? I'll fix the grammar well on the MCAT.
You're that person.
I'm that person.
I believe you meant to say how well, I
Very
won't.
common question.
Very, very common question. I won't answer this with a binary yes or no, because every school has different or covers different topics in different courses, right? So like in theory, if you take general chemistry 1 and 2, you should be covered for the general chemistry that is on the MCAT. But it might be that at your school, they cover, 80% of the general chemistry that's on the MCAT in general chemistry 1, for instance. So generally speaking, my recommendation is don't go and take the MCAT without all the prereqs, and do the thing where you say, I haven't taken biochemistry, I haven't taken physics 2, I'm just going to self-study that stuff and I'll be fine on the MCAT. Like, that's not a great plan of attack. So I'll put it this way. You cannot compromise taking biochemistry, because biochemistry requires a biology background from the general bio courses, as well as the chemistry background from both GChem and OChem, or Gen Chem and Orgo, depending on which abbreviation it is that you use. So that sequence is not, I don't think that one is really, you shouldn't try to compromise that. That being said, you could probably get away with it if you're testing a little bit later in your term and you've covered most of the stuff and there's maybe just a few things that haven't been covered. Like, that's fine. Physics 2 is another big one that a lot of students will not have taken by the time they're going to go take the MCAT. So that one, you could potentially work around some of the topics because they're smaller, they're lower yield. Physics 1, so basically mechanics, work, torque, all those things. That stuff you need to know. You get into electrostatics, you need to know that, but you get into some of the more optics, of course, but you get into some of the more nuanced stuff in physics. You can potentially kind of self-study those. The behavioral sciences is the tricky one, because depending on your school, it might actually not even make sense for you to take too many of the behavioral science courses. And here's what I mean by this. Depending on your school, it might be, I've seen this happen plenty of times, where if you were to look at the list of the topics that are tested in the behavioral sciences and map it against the curriculum or the coursework at your school, all of a sudden you are looking at like 6 new courses that you have to take into your already busy schedule, and you're only taking those courses for the sake of studying for the MCAT. So that then doesn't make sense to go take 6 additional classes just for the sake of the MCAT. So, general psychology, definitely, like that's a big one. It's more the sociology topics that sometimes can be spread across lots and lots of different courses. So that one, you could potentially get away with doing some self-study. But regardless, you do need to learn the content before you start actually practicing utilizing the content for the MCAT. So
there you go. All right. good question here. If I'm currently scoring a 497 on my latest full length, and I have my MCAT on March 7th, am I in a good position to actually take it by then?
I mean,
So
it's
we're
only
January,
December.
February, March, 3 months.
Yeah, it's only. I mean, you've got 3 months, so I wouldn't even make that. I wouldn't even worry about making that call right now. So that's the. I mean, you've got time. Obviously, depends on the score you're aiming for, and it also depends on kind of where you started, right? So if you were to say, well, I started at 497 and I've been studying on my own for 3 months and I'm still scoring a 497, then I would say, well, there's no trajectory, so you got to change something about what you're doing, right? Like that's a different answer than, okay, I was scoring 487 when I started. Now 2 months later, I'm at a 497. I'd say, okay, well, keep going. You've got trajectory, right? So you've got momentum, and it's a matter of now, again, building on that and figuring out what efficiencies you can build in, what mentoring and coaching you can get in order to get yourself to the next level. So that's the that's kind of where you're at right now. But you're 3 months away is what it is. So it's still a little bit early, I think, to make a call. If you were telling me I'm getting a 497, I want a 515, and I'm testing January 10th, I would say, okay, let's have a conversation, right? Because that's an 18-point increase in less than a month. Like, let's talk about that. Actually, sorry, January 9th, because it's hard to believe the first MCAT for 2026 is now a month away. So we are literally January 9th. We're a month away from the first MCAT. But yeah, that's kind of where you're at right now. So
1 month. Dun, dun, dun. Wait, let me see. Do I have?
Do you have the sound?
Right. My heartbeat's going fast. What's this one? We're a month away.
That's about the emotion. Right?
Yes, I love the new sound effects built into StreamYard are fun. What's this one?
Gong.
There you go, the classic gong. All right. Do you think the biochem section score is a stronger predictor of passing boards compared to other sections like cars? I got a 129, but my overall score is 503. I managed to get into 3 DO schools. Petros, as much as the AAMC likes to say there's some correlation with passing boards and whatever, I was talking to someone recently who said that really the only correlation that they've seen is like performance in like their third year clerkships, which doesn't make sense to me either.
Yeah.
I don't know. What do you think?
I mean, the official line is that the AMC, or the official line is that the MCAT is a predictor for how you'll perform on your step 1, which is after your preclinical years. Like that's the official correlation that is, so how well you're going to be able to survive the first couple of years of med school. But here's the deal. There have been studies that have shown that regardless of MCAT score after a certain point, right? I don't remember what the numbers were, but after a certain score, the likelihood of passing doesn't like change dramatically if you have if you have an X versus a X plus 10 score. I don't remember what the number was. So it's, so there's that is what it comes down to. I think you said it last week. I think it was last week. You're going to go to med school and they're going to teach you how to become a doctor, but they're also going to teach you how to do well on the boards, right? I mean, the tell me if I'm wrong. I'm not in med school myself, but the goal of a med school is to make doctors. They're not going to like put you through med school and then like try to not help you get to becoming a doctor. So that's the important thing. So, yeah. I wouldn't look too much into the scores. I mean, really, the scores are used by the schools to see if you're going to be a good fit for them as part of the application, right? So that's the big take-home message. It is a component of your application and helps them compare your performance against the other people that are also applying. So,
yeah. All right.
I do want to answer correlational analysis question at some point, but
this
we don't
one?
do right now. Yeah. The
I didn't even know.
tile in percentile, here's your like language lesson for the day. It comes from illis, which effectively means capacity. It's Latin. I took 4 years Latin in high school. That's it. So,
all right.
Yeah.
Leo, do schools take into consideration MCAT GPA scored while working full-time pharmacy tech? Yeah, so they can definitely they can see it all, and the schools that choose to take that into account, they will. My answer always to that, Petros, is that's not something in your control, so don't worry about it. Do what you can do. Score what you can score.
Yep.
Do you think a 496 to 503 to 499 to 517 looks crazy on an application? They finally figured it out. Lauren crushed it. Congrats, Lauren.
Yeah.
I don't see this often where someone like it just like a light switch clicks for them for whatever reason. Maybe they just never tried hard and they took it 3 times going, oh, I'll just take it again. I'll take it again. I'll take it. Okay, fine. I'll finally try. And then they're like, oh, here's how you do it. What's the craziest number of MCATs attempts that you've seen prior to the 7 being the max?
The max? I think it was like 5 or 6. So it wasn't even. That's why when they came out with the 7 as being the max, I was like, all right, I have spoken to a couple of students this past year who would be on their 7th attempt. So
Yeah.
Yes, that is that. I don't want to. I'm not going to disagree with you on the statement, but I've seen a lot of MCAT scores and I've seen a lot of MCAT students through the years. If the score is hovering in a certain place, that's usually an indicator that it's not that you weren't trying, but you weren't trying or doing the right things for you to make that improvement, right? To see that kind of to break through whatever that sound barrier was that's there. So, I see it as a moment of, okay, I did it once. That's the 496. I worked hard and got a 7-point improvement, which is not an easy feat. It gets a little harder in the middle of the curve because you have to get more questions right to start to get over the hump, if you will. And then the dip is more likely. Again, wasn't in your head, Lauren, so I don't know if this is exactly what happened, but like the dip is not actually that much of a dip because it's only like 3 or 4 points, right? In terms of the direction, but it's also probably a settlement of like, okay, I'm going to just, I improved the first time, so I'm going to keep doing those things, and I should see more of an improvement. And then the 4th time is, tell me, 18-point increase. That's like light bulbs going off, right? That is, all right, now this is all, all the things are working the way that I want them to work. We see this in lots of places, not just, the MCAT. We see this even in our own kind of performance in doing things, right? We struggle, and then there's this improvement. And it's also sometimes just linked to when you're being assessed. I go back to this a lot. Score improvement on the MCAT is not linear. It's not a perfectly straight line. It happens in plateaus. It's kind of like increase, plateau, increase, plateau. But what's hard about it is you're not constantly being assessed, meaning you're not taking a full-length exam every day. So if you happen to take a full length at times when you're still in a plateau, then it might just be that you're still in the plateau and the score shows as being very similar, and you think you're not actually improving. You just haven't overcome whatever that, it's like a phase change where you haven't overcome the phase change. Actually, literally, that's what it is, right?
I haven't absorbed enough energy to overcome.
No, students love this because, in a phase change, you've got this period of time where you're just putting heat into the system, but the temperature is staying exactly the same. And then all of a sudden, the temperature starts to go up. And so that's, but it's just a matter of when you're actually taking the measurements. It's easier in a phase change because you stick the thermometer in the bucket of water or whatever that you're boiling. You don't do that on the MCAT. You don't take a full length every day. So that's you gain enough, you got to gain that latent energy. Exactly. You got to overcome and all those bonds, start breaking them apart and start seeing that happen. So that's it.
Yeah. I was watching a very interesting video. You might nerd out on it. It was good. I forget the person, the channel. It's a very popular channel, but I was watching it, and it was all about how the like super special alloy that they use in the turbine blades in airplane engines, jet
Mhm.
engines, have to withstand heats that are greater than the actual melting point of the metal, and
Mhm.
how they do that and how it happens. And it's really cool
Yeah.
going through that phase change, getting heated up and nothing happening.
Nothing happened.
All right. Good questions. Keep them coming. I'm a 41-year-old physician assistant looking to start a 2-year post-bac pre-med cert program to then sit for the MCAT by the end of 2027. Any optimal MCAT study resources and study time frame? This really is a question for anyone in any situation, right? Whether it's end of 2027, beginning of 2028, whatever they're looking for in terms of time frame. What does that general conversation look like for, hey, Petros, when do I need to start studying and what should I look
Yeah.
at?
Yeah. So you're in an interesting spot for a couple reasons. So I'll answer the question kind of nuanced to you, but also in general. So one, you're in an interesting spot because you've probably taken some of the coursework already as part of your previous or current career, I should say. Um, you're entering into a post-bac program where you're going to be taking some of that coursework again, or a higher level of that coursework as you're going through things. So I think really step one for you in terms of the MCAT timeline, and this might sound crazy even though it's 2 years away, um, take a diagnostic exam. Just get yourself exposed to it, see what it is that you know, see that that you're confident on, and then see what it is that you're sitting there going, I have no idea what this is. So when you're going through the post-bac program, you're able to pay a little more attention, a little more closely to the material that's going to be tested on the MCAT, but more importantly, how it's going to be tested on the MCAT. For everybody else, if you haven't yet taken the coursework, you need to take the coursework before you take a diagnostic. Like that's generally the advised thing to do. Last thing you want to do is take a MCAT diagnostic the first day of undergrad. You've taken none of the stuff. You're not going to do well on it. Is what it comes down to. And you're going to feel like the world is ending. The key though is to map it out backwards. So you say, okay, I want to be, and we'll use the hypothetical ideal here, or we'll use the ideal as the hypothetical. That's what I meant to say. So if you want to apply in, let's call it May of 27, right? You work backwards and say, okay, that's when I want to put my application in. So I need to take my MCAT, ideally have it done by, let's call it April of 27, and then work backwards from there and say, well, I want to give myself about 4 to 5 months to study for the MCAT. Then you're looking at around December of 2026. So a year from now is when you would start studying for the MCAT if you were testing in 2027. That's the ideal, right? That's the hypothetical, and that's the ideal. Then you have to start to consider, what else do you have going on? I've got school, I've got work, I've got this, I've got that, and make adjustments accordingly, because it's not easy to just say, all right, I'm going to spend 4 months studying for the MCAT and not consider everything else that's going on. So I think there is a need for planning as far as the time frame is concerned. As far as optimal study resources, really that's student to student. The one thing that I will say is there is no reason, and that's part of the reason why we're here at med school headquarters and why we're doing office hours like this. Like, there's no reason in this day and age to try to do this alone. I'm not saying you have to necessarily get a tutor or take a course, but what I'm saying is there are so many resources out there from others who have gone through this process before. There are resources like the ones we offer here in terms of office hours and free events and all that good stuff to get information as far as building out your plan. So utilize them is really what it comes down to. That's the advice that I will give. It's you're not in a vacuum, I think, is the that's not that that is not that would not have been true 30 years ago, right? Like, that is there was more of a vacuum. Information was not as readily available as what it comes down to. So
Yep. Awesome. Good luck. Welcome to the dark side. How do schools view uneven MCAT splits? 129 Chem Phys, 123 Psych Soc. You have a general thought on this, on the uneven section scores? It's a very common concern.
Yeah, it's a common concern. I think it varies though, and let me justify what I mean by this. So if there's 3 sections that are all about the same, and there's one that's considerably higher or considerably lower, is different than if there are 2 that are, one's 2 are really high, 2 are really low, or relatively there's a big difference, versus the final flip, which is that they're like 3 low, or which one did I say first? 3 high and 1 low, right? So it's there's that unevenness as far as the splits is there. But quite frankly, there's a reason why schools, and again, this is not from the admission side, just from the kind of the number side, there's a reason why the scores are reported as section scores and as overall scores, right? So, a 500 and a 500 are not necessarily made in the same way. So schools are, looking to see how that correlates to GPAs. It's looking at how it correlates to, to other things in terms of the application, students' interest, all that good stuff. So, as far as the score itself is concerned, if there's one outlier and it's the low outlier, that's where I was trying to go with this. If there's one and it's a low outlier, and it's a big low outlier, maybe something to consider for a retest, not necessarily necessitates a retest, as far as, unless you know that there's something that you can do differently. Sometimes, especially with, I've seen this with the Psych Soc a lot, the Psych Soc, because of what we talked about earlier, actually, that maybe not having done all the coursework, can tend to be a little bit lower, and there's just more opportunity in that section. So maybe it is worth resetting. But if you're not going to be able to do anything really different, then it's not in your interest to necessarily invest too much time retesting. So
okay. All right. Why don't my prereq bio courses cover any of the anatomy in the Kaplan bio textbook? Is that normal? Because anatomy is not bio?
Yeah, so I would talk to you. Well, I mean, so the MCAT, the anatomy that's tested on the MCAT is systems, right? Organ systems, as far as understanding like how the digestive system works and how muscles work and how the kidneys work and all that good stuff. It's not anatomy per se, right? So that's there. I would say check with your school, to see what maybe they're missing as far as systems, or maybe there's a course that you were supposed to take that you didn't take, or that you didn't have to take for your major, but you need to take as far as the MCAT is concerned. So that would be my take there.
Yeah.
But the best source of truth, though, is to go to the AMC website.
Yep.
And go to their outline for what is tested on the MCAT. They are, kudos to the AMC. They are the most transparent of any of the test makers out there. And I've, been involved in this for a long time, and I've worked in the other ones too. Like, they are the most transparent as far as, here's what we're going to test you on. And if they're going to add something or take something away, they are very good about saying, we are no longer going to be testing this, right? So, and vice versa. So something to, that would be the source of truth that I would go to.
Yeah. Okay. That is the source.
None of the organ systems are in your Bio 1 or Bio 2 classes. Yeah, I would. I'm not going to ask you to publicly tell us what school you're at, but I would love to know, because that's the. Now I'm just curious. Is what it is. So.
Well, I'm thinking back to my bio. Again, like it's not anatomy.
It's not anatomy, but I'm thinking back to my bio, and we definitely covered all of the systems that are on the MCAT.
Yeah, I don't know.
So,
yeah.
I do think, this is personal opinion. This is not the opinion of med school headquarters. Not, like, this is my personal opinion. I do think that schools have gravitated to spending much more time on the molecular biology and genetics and all those things in the general bio courses than historically they had in the past. So just something to keep in mind. But
yeah. Okay. There you go. All right.
I did want to comment on, was it Yojo Mojo's note as far as getting comfortable with reading scientific journals? Like, that is definitely good advice. Like, so whoever gave you that advice, or if you just did that on your own, kudos. Like, that is a very good thing to do. Just getting comfortable reading science. That's not a textbook, right? Reading science, because scientific journals require you to interpret things and to read into graphs and read into statistics and make interpretations as you're going through. So definitely a good thing to do. Even if you don't necessarily understand all of it, that's fine, right? Like, it's not, it's the act of getting comfortable with that is definitely a good bit of advice. So
yeah,
thank whoever told you that, because if you came up with it on your own, then good job thinking correctly. So
okay. All righty.
Good question today. I love it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love it. So we looked at the wild MCAT trend. I have a 355, 3540. This guy there makes sense. That's not an MCAT question. Come back tomorrow. Keep them coming. All right. Let's see. Scientific journals, blah, blah, blah. Let me check over on Instagram. Yeah. All right, we'll go to Lauren's question because there were no other ones. We looked at a wild MCAT trend, 3535 science, 4.0 master's program. There's not enough information here, Lauren, to decide. What's your master's in? How many credits was it? What is your upward trend in your undergraduate GPA? There's a lot of questions here to really give you any answer. And what is a competitive MD school? They're all competitive. Even DO schools are competitive. All right, Petros, I know you have a slide deck you want to cover.
I do, but we're going to have to abbreviate it because it's far more than we have time for. So that's fine. We'll just do the rest next time. But I can get to the punchline is what I can get to. So that's
all right.
That's the bet. Oh, there we go. Sorry, did it at the same time.
Nope.
Oh, hey, I like this view. It was kind of cool. Now, are we gonna stay there? Is that what's gonna happen when I go to the next slide?
Yes, but I can also.
Can you move us?
I can move us. Let's see, but it makes us small.
It's gonna cover stuff.
Yeah. You do your
while
thing.
You're doing that,
I'll play. Yeah.
Yeah, you play. I'll just give everybody. Here's the study tip for the day. So the MCAT's a lot. I mean, there's a lot of science on the MCAT. We all know that. But it's a lot of reading, which is why the note about reading scientific passages made me smile, because you're going to be reading a lot of stuff on the MCAT, and you have to bring in all your information as far as the sciences, et cetera, et cetera. But then you get to the cars section where you have no science that you can fall back onto. And kind of one of the big problems that students have a lot of the time is they get stuck reading, right? They get they overread. That's the easiest way to put it. So the recommendation that I will make to you, and you have to practice this to get good at it, is one, to let go of the details. Like, don't get bogged down in the details. But two, as you're reading through the passages, build out, literally on your scratchboard, build out an outline of what the purpose was of each paragraph. Like, literally why did the author spend a minute to write this paragraph? What was their purpose? What were they trying to convey to you? And if you can do that, then what you end up with is a clean summary of what was in each paragraph without getting bogged down in the details. And then you can use the details if you need to when the questions dictate that you're going to need to use the details. So you essentially use the purpose of each paragraph to tell you, okay, this is where I need to go to when I'm answering questions. But more importantly, I'm not then allowing myself to get bogged down in the details. The caveat to all this is this takes time to really get good at and get fast at. You will actually, so the reason why I hesitate with saying this is if you're testing in the next the next month, it might already be, I don't want to say too late, but I don't want you to try to start to incorporate something new that is going to take you some time to develop if you're not going to have enough time to develop it. So just bear that in mind as we're going through this. But regardless, here's how you do it. So this is a sample passage. We'll just do a couple of the paragraphs just so you can kind of get a sense of what it is. It was this time of year, so I felt like this was appropriate as far as the season was concerned. So each December, as the sun begins surrendering its authority over the northern hemisphere, commentators ritualize the lament about winter's cruelty. Yet the keening ignores an older vernacular that once greeted the season with almost filial respect. So a lot of big words in this. So this is definitely one of those philosophical passages, as it were. Early modern diaries from Northern Europe, for instance, describe the cold not as an adversary, but as a tutor. It disciplined the soil, chased vermin from grain stores, it imposed an enforced leisure that fostered storytelling by the hearth. Such chronicles do not romanticize hardship, they simply refuse to reduce winter to deprivation alone. So if you look at the paragraph, there are a lot of big words, right? A lot of things to get bogged down in. You're sitting there going we've got the cold isn't an adversary, it's a tutor, and this is what it taught us, right? So here's this kind of idealized teaching of what the cold has taught us, that the vermin weren't in the grain stores, because probably back then in old Europe, the grain stores were very important because you don't want the vermin in there because they were going to eat up all the grain and you didn't have it. And an enforced leisure because you could sit around by the fire and tell your story. So it's almost this kind of Norman Rockwellian picture of the winter time that's being painted here. But there's a lot of fluff. I mean, I'm going to straight talk this thing, right? There's a lot of excess information in here for a very, very simple point. The whole reason why the author wrote this rather long-winded paragraph was to tell you that, hey, here are the historical attitudes that were towards winter, right? That's all it is. It's not what the historical attitudes are is less important than the fact that the purpose of the paragraph is to tell you that there were these different historical attitudes towards winter that, weren't necessarily viewed as being negative, but they were viewed as being this positive, enlightening tutor that's going to teach you how to survive and get, be a better human, whatever you want to infer from the statement. But point blank, all they're telling you is, here's how it used to be as far as the attitudes towards winter in the past. What the attitude was is less important than just knowing that the reason the paragraph was written was to talk about the historical attitudes. And where this comes into play, and this is what's oftentimes kind of overseen, is it comes into play of, okay, if they're asking you questions that relate to needing information about what the historical attitudes were, to go to the first paragraph in order to be able to answer those questions, right? That's the kind of the key difference between getting overly bogged down in this stuff and just extracting the information that you absolutely need, right? It's a very, very kind of clean bit there. The second paragraph, right? The earlier tact contrasts sharply with the atmosphere of contemporary meteorological discourse, which tends to translate weather into the language of emergency alerts and commodity futures. Snow no longer a pedagogical presence becomes a logistical inconvenience. Ice is a sculptor of reflective silence, but a liability line for municipalities. The modern subject, armed with central heating and flight schedules, feels paradoxically more besieged by the seasoned villagers who own neither. The estrangement suggests that technological insulation amplifies rather than mutes our sensitivities. So the whole point of all these words, right, as far as what kind of is happening in modern times, is to say, okay, here's the modern perception of winter. So immediately, as soon as you see this setup where they have the historical attitude towards winter, the modern attitudes or perceptions towards winter, you now actually have identified a very classic MCAT structure for passages. And so this is the big punchline for the day. The big classic structure is they're going to present one side of the story and then give you the alternative side, and it's the contrast. The MCAT loves the contrast. As soon as you see, so write this down, don't forget this, as soon as you see that there is some type of contrast that is going to be coming through, all that means is there are going to be questions about the contrast. So then you can be on your tippy toes about those contrasts that are going to be occurring. So that's kind of the big thing to look at here as far as today is concerned, is recognizing when there are going to be all these little details that are thrown in there, but more importantly, start to look for patterns as far as the argument is concerned. I won't read the third and the fourth paragraph for you, but this is what the outline looks like. So, what was said is less important than what you're about to see here. So we have the historical attitudes towards winter, the modern, and then the third and fourth paragraph start to do that setup, right? So there's this seasonality is both a natural phenomenon and a cultural construction. And then they show you the consequences of the modern detachment from winter. Here's the classic structure. And so this is kind of what I want you to take away here as well, is you've got the setup for the contrast in the first two paragraphs, and then the third and fourth paragraphs expand on that contrast. They say, okay, now that we've shown you the contrast, let us expand on this to drive home our main point. And the main point that they're trying to make is really the first line that I wrote out here as far as the summary, to argue that modern society has become estranged from winter, right? Modern society has kind of removed themselves and now they're not able to actually learn anymore like the people used to way back in the day, right? That's the whole point that they're making. This is classic structure. Well, they'll set up something in the past, set up A, contrast with B, drive their point home to show that the original was better than the new. And that's the very kind of common MCAT passage structure from that perspective. So there's your lesson, or there's your thought for the day.
There's the thought for the day.
Insight for the day.
Love it. Keep them coming. Here's a question. How do you think the new MCAT has changed from when it first came out to now? So the new MCAT, for those who don't know, April 2015 was the first iteration of the quote-unquote new MCAT, also known as the 2015 MCAT. Mm-hmm. Small changes, big changes. Have we seen any big shifts?
Okay, so I will tell you, if you want the full history lesson, that'll be another office hour. On another day, we can have get a little fireside chat around the hearth, and we can all sip our eggnog and we can talk about it. No, so when the MCAT went through its major revision and launched in April of 2015, there were a lot of question marks that the AMC themselves, I think, had, right, of the validity of the exam, which they did a whole bunch of validity studies in the lead up to the exam. There was actually an experimental section on the old MCAT that students would take so that they could start to validate the new structure of the exam, et cetera, et cetera. But like anything, version 1 is not going to be as great as version 2 or 3 or 4. And the way I like to answer this question, is I actually get this question a lot, is it's kind of like your phone. So I'll use Apple as the example. When the first iPhone came out back in 2007, it was a leap forward in terms of what cell phones look like at the time, but in no way was it as great as and useful as it is today. right? Which is now however many years, like 2007, I think. So like we're looking at 19 years or so since that, since that was released. But in the first couple of years, as they were updating the product, you saw some bigger changes that were happening between whatever it was, like iPhone 3G and whatever the names were that they came out with at the time. But then over time, it just became subtle little changes and subtle little improvements. So as far as the question here in terms of the MCAT, has it changed since it came out? Yes, it has. It has gotten to become a better exam in that it is more validated, and they've gotten better at writing the exam and putting the exam together. There were also some topic areas, some content areas that they removed, that they had kind of brought in, and they said, we're going to see if we're going to test this. And they removed them, and there were some that maybe had gotten ignored a little bit, and they brought them a little bit more front and center. Mm-hmm. But where I'll go with this, so Marco, I love the question, and we could talk about it, forever. So yes, it has changed. It's evolved. But the reality is, for you, it doesn't actually matter, right? This is kind of the point, the focus I want you. It doesn't matter whether or not it has changed per se, because you're not taking whatever the older version of the new MCAT was. You're going to take the current version of the MCAT. So that's kind of the important thing. Now, if it's related to materials that you're utilizing, obviously get materials that are a little bit more up to date. You don't want materials that are from 2014 or 2015. That's actually why I even say in the AMC resources, if you get the MCAT bundle, there is a AMC full-length exam that's called the sample test, and it's unscored. That test was released in 2014. So it's more than 10 years old, and it has not been updated, and they don't give you a score. And the reason why that test was called the sample test was they needed to have a sample for what the new test was going to look like for students that were going to be testing. But because they hadn't kind of finalized the scaling of the new test, they didn't assign a score to it. So it's still available. It's good practice as far as questions, but I wouldn't utilize it as like, a core study item for you.
Yeah. Stuff. Question about UWorld. Do you view UWorld as a form of content review too, if you haven't taken some prereqs in a few years? So let's remove UWorld and just Cubase in general.
Questions. Yeah. So do we view questions as a form of content review? Yes, in that you will do questions, and your performance on those questions will dictate what level of content review you need to go back and do. So that's the answer, right? Is that if you use questions to help you gauge what content it is that you need to review and at what level you need to review it, then yes, it is content review. Is it content review in the purest sense of the term? Content review, let me just tell you what content review is in the purest sense. Content review in the purest sense of the term is me going, okay, everybody, the ideal gas law is PV equals nRT. P stands for pressure, V stands for volume, N stands for that. That is what content review is. If you do that for your MCAT prep, that's not going to be your recipe for success, right? The recipe for success is, okay, I remember that it's PV equals nRT. Let me do 10 problems to practice solving for PV equals nRT.
Yeah. And I think this is unfortunately what a lot of students do is they go to the question bank, they do questions, they review the question, they look at the explanations, whether it's from UWorld or AAMC or whoever it is, and that is their content review. They don't then go back to the books or back to the actual content to dive in more.
To learn it, or to review it. Yeah. So that is merely your launching point for the content.
Yeah. Don't do that. All right, friends.
I mean, you can do that.
You can. It's not advised. You can. Don't recommend.
You may do that. But.
Yes. No, we ban you. You're not allowed to do that. All right, friends. Another MCAT office hours in the books. We're here almost every Tuesday at 4 p.m. Eastern to answer your MCAT questions, cover some passages and questions live as well. So think of this as your free hour of MCAT prep as you are in the season of MCAT. So come hang out with us. Tell your friends about us. Tell your advisors about us. We're here almost every week. Again, Tuesdays, 4 p.m. Eastern. Petros, thanks for hanging out. Thanks for your wisdom, as always.
Thanks for having me, and thanks for hanging out as well. We'll see each other next week.
Sounds
Same
good.
time.
Bye-bye.